Broadcasting from Ireland, featuring interviews with some of the biggest names in magic. Welcome to the Deceive Reality Podcast with your hosts, David Peace and Steve Spade.
And we're back. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deceive Reality Podcast. I'm here with Steve. Steve, how are you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Great. And we've got a very special guest in the middle, Mr. Chris Congreave. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, guys. How are you?
Good now.
Good.
Thanks for joining us on this lovely evening, getting into the summer wedding and corporate season.
The rain's getting warmer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's that sort of situation. Even though we've been lucky the last few weeks, but it's gone back to typical old raining.
It's peed it down all day today here. Hurrah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we always start with the simple question, because why not start at the beginning? For yourself with magic and that sort of stuff, how did you get into magic? But then also, how did you get into sort of creating your own routines and sort of that evolution?
Oh, blimey, that's a long question, isn't it? So, I first fell in love with magic like most people did, watching a TV magician, and in my case, it was Paul Daniels in the I'm guessing 70s and 80s. I can't quite remember now. So it would have been 70s and 80s. And I used to look forward to it every week. And, seeing things like Hans Moretti, I don't know if you remember him with the crossbows and stuff, and the bunko booth for your routine, and even variety things like, the bubble blowing with the cigarette smoke and all that. And it had a big effect on me, really. But I had no way of getting into it. So I learned a card trick quite young, and that was my party piece, and I did it everywhere. And then I started. I bumped into a magician who I'm still friends with today, Dave Taylor. He works on my stand at Blackpool and things like that. And Dave was performing at a gig in Wolverhampton. I think it was New Year's Eve, God, many years ago now, probably close to 30 years ago. And he said, I asked him for some advice on how to get started, because in them days there was no internet, and you couldn't, like now it's easy, isn't it? I want to learn magic tricks, and you get bombarded with them, whereas with then there was no way of finding out, unless you met a magician in the flesh, So Dave wrote down Hugard and Brow and the Royal Road to Card Magic. So again, no magic shops in my area, so I went to a bookshop in a department store, and they put me in touch with. They got hold of Hugard and Brow, but it was card manipulations, I think, an expert card technique. So it was like really. So I was learning stuff that was like way beyond my skill levels, and then I stumbled into, and then I heard about a magic and joke shop near me. Where a very young Craig Petty had just started as a magic demonstrator. So I started going in there and was buying stuff off him and another guy, Mike. And it went from there, really. So there you go. So that was how I got into it. It was a long sort of process, really. I mean, even then, when there was no real internet magic, in the early 90s and stuff. Yeah. Or mid-90s. So, you these are the days of, and I don't know about you guys. I mean, I guess you've been into magic for a long time as well. When I first started absorbing everything, it was a case of you bought books, videos, and also you'd just get catalogues with stuff and everything sounded amazing. So you'd send off for a trick out of this catalogue, that sounded like the most amazing thing ever. And when it turned up, it was like a card with a bit of thread or a bit of sticky on it and stuff. And you're like, oh, what in the and hiding the receipts from your missus, because you spent 20 quid on this thing or 30 quid, or whatever it was. So that was it, really. And then so going into I started gigging in the early 2000s, probably about, I'm trying to think when my first gig was. It would have been about 2002, somewhere around there. And then I've been gigging for probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years. And then I met up with someone you both know, I'm sure, Gary Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And I met Gary at a lecture. It was at an Andy Nyman lecture at Wolverhampton Magic Circle. And again, this is probably 20 years ago or so, I imagine, somewhere around there. And we sat, and after the lecture, we went and had a beer. Gary and I would do partake in a beer now and again. And he's showing me a load of stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's great. Whose is that? And he goes, oh, that's mine. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And then he showed me something else. He goes, whose is that? And he goes, that's mine. And it got me thinking about, instead of just reading all this stuff in books and everything, and to start creating and start thinking about my own routines. So became friends with Gary quite quickly, and we were on the phone most days. And then I started having ideas and bouncing them off him, and I still do to this day. If I have an idea, he's one of the first sort of 2 or 3 people that I'll ring up and say, "Oh, do you know what do you think about this?" In fact, I was doing it last week. So there you go. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, cool.
It is mad how long it takes, like, a lot of times to realize you can create your own tricks. And it's only when you talk to someone else who is doing it that you go, oh, shit, yeah, I could actually.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I mean, some people, I've got a good friend, Owen Strickland, and Owen, like, he's one of the busiest magicians I know. He's, like, always working. I think he's got something like 22 weddings in May. You know, he's, like, really, really busy guy. And he just says, oh, I'm not creative. And he just sort of blows it off like that, you know. And I'll say to him, you have to, it's like anything else, you have to work at it. You have to sit there. Some days, like, you know, I'll sit there and I'll think, right, and I'll get a pack of cards out, or I'll get a coin out or something, and I'll just force myself to create something. And sometimes I've come up with some really good stuff, I think, and other times it's absolute crap and you end up chucking it in the bin. But, you know, I've got drawers full of stuff that I've worked on at some point, and I get it out now and I can't even remember what the idea was or anything, you know. But you just have to, you just have to sort of work at it like anything else. It's like when you're practicing, when you're first starting out, when you're practicing a double lift or an arms lift, you know, you work at it, don't you? It's the same thing.
Yeah. I remember me and Steve talked recently about, like, when you go back to old notes of something, and I'm sure when I wrote the note, it made absolute perfect sense of, like, how could I not know what this trick is? And now you're reading it and being like, this makes no sense.
Yeah. I don't keep notes really. I sort of obsess over something, so I'll get the initial idea, and then I'll just obsess about it until I'm happy with it and polished, and I'm happy with it, you know. And then I'll move on to the next thing. I can't work on 3 or 4 or 5 tricks at a time. It's just not the way my brain works. I'll work on a trick until I'll say I'm happy with it. You know what it's like. As soon as you've published it, later on you'll think, and you'll think of another variation, or you'll think of a better way of doing it. And that's like in my last book, I put a trick out that I really love called Mac Sandwich. It's a great trick. And as soon as the book went out, I came up with a really much cleaner way of handling it and doing it. You know, there's not a move in it at all now, and it'll feel most magicians that you show it to. You know, it's a real magician fooler, and there's no moves in it at all, which is great, which is what I love. But yeah, so I tend to do one thing at a time.
I mean, I remember watching a documentary about Coldplay, and Chris Martin was saying he writes like 1,000 songs a month, but they're all shit. You know, you got to get the bad ones out of the way to get the hit. And it's like anything with creatives, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've come up with some stuff over the year. And when and here's the thing, right? When you first come up with it, you think it's great, you know, and it's only when you sort of, sometimes you'll come to realization yourself that it's shit, but very often it's because I'll show it to somebody else and they'll tell me it's shit. You know, you know, the magician's wife, you know, the misaligned magician's wife is perfect for this. You know, I'll show my wife something and she'll either say, "Oh, that's really great," or it's shit. Having said that, I showed a cloak and she didn't get the joke at all. She just didn't understand it. And it's probably one of my biggest sellers over the last few years. But she's French, so she hasn't got the same sense of humour as us. I guess I'll blame it on that.
I find that way as well. Like, if I sometimes show my wife something that I think is really bad or stupid, and she's like, "That's brilliant," and I'm like, "Crap! I now need to do it all the time."
It's mad, isn't it? And I used to, I haven't got it anymore, but I used to have a residency at a football club. And there was one guy at a table, and he knew a little bit about magic. So every time I was working on something new, I'd get to his table, and he'd be like, you know. And the first time I did Omen, he absolutely freaked me. He was like, "That's amazing!" He says, "It's made, it's given me goosebumps and all this type of stuff." And you knew you was on to win. And I'd go and show him other stuff, and he just look at me like that, and you think, "Yeah, okay, fair enough." Stick it back in your pocket. But you get the trick, don't you? And then it's you guys know yourself. It's later on that you polish it and you put the gags and the presentation around it and make it a piece of entertainment rather than just a trick, which is, as you know yourself as performers, that's the hard part, really. The trick's the easy part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of that comes like organically as well, in that like a lot of people write scripts. I find myself, I'll go out and out doing the tricks and just see what I say. And what if I go, oh, that got a reaction, remember that. And then it's like, then that's how like you end up in a script then like 10 years into doing the routine.
And they become almost like scripted ad libs, don't they? And that's the way it should feel for your audience. That I'm talking about close up here. Obviously, if you're on stage, it has to be a tight script. I think that's important. But for close up workers, it has to feel fresh and that you're talking to your audience, because it's a personal. It's a personal performance, isn't it? So you got to feel like And some of my best gags and lines, as you know yourself, you sort of ad lib something one night. And you think, oh, that got a big laugh, and then you just park it and you'll use it again. And some of the other ones have come from spectators. And I'll give you an example of that happened last summer. So during wedding season, now I do a chop cup routine quite often. I'll do it at tables. I've started doing it in walk around now and not so much at tables and just using a really small cup. But the reason for that was my big cup got stolen. But anyway, that's another story. So I used to do this chop cup routine, and my opening sort of line was, have you ever seen the thing with the 3 cups and the ball? And most people will say, yeah, even if they haven't seen it performed, they're aware of it. And you'll say, sometimes you might see it done with 3 shells and a pea, and they'll go, oh, yeah. And you say, well, this is the Wolverhampton version. It's 1 cup and 1 ball. And I used to say, and it used to get a little bit of a chuckle, and I used to say, I couldn't afford the other 2 cups, which got, again, another little chuckle. And I was doing this gig, this wedding gig last year, and it was in a sort of quite a wealthy area in the West Midlands called Sutton Coldfield. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's near Birmingham. It's quite a well-to-do area. And I said, I said to this lady, I said, 1 cup, 1 ball. I said, and she said, oh, did somebody pinch the other 2 cups from Wolverhampton? And I thought it was great. So now whenever I say it, I say, this is the Wolverhampton version, 1 cup, 1 ball. Somebody nicked the other 2 before you ask, and it just... it's a nothing line, but it just gets. It's one, yourself. When you hit them with 2, 3, 4 gags quickly, and it just sets the scene and it sets the mood and everybody. And like I said, it's like scripted ad libs, and then that gives you room for genuine ad libs as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, because you have that situation where you want to feel like you're engaging with people. Because I find sometimes I get too. Like, I'm like, oh, now time for this ad lib, now time for this ad lib. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm ahead of myself. This guy doesn't make sense because I haven't done the thing yet. I do it.
And the other thing I've seen people do in the past, when they're doing their scripts and they're sort of set on a script, and even if it's a script of ad libs, I can't believe I've just done that. But you'll see people when something happens that they're not expecting, and they sort of hit the pause button and they don't know what to say. And then they just carry on with a script. Whereas, I don't know, you've just got to feel like it's all natural and, flowy and everything else.
It has to feel kind of effortless. It has to feel like the magic. Like if it looks like you're doing moves, it's not magic,
Exactly.
That's just going to flow.
And that just comes with experience, doesn't it? And it's from everything to just the way you take things out of your pockets and the way you put them back. You guys must be the same. And any performing magician would know this. But, you always know where everything is. I always have my props in the same pockets, always. And people worry about how you transition from one trick to the next. But as long as you put those things away and you've got the next thing out there's nothing worse than seeing somebody patting himself down like this. And where did I put that? It just looks clumsy and cluttered, doesn't it? But you just take one thing, put one thing away as the next one thing's out, and then you can just carry on and it just becomes second nature, doesn't it? Like anything else.
Mm-hmm. I found that with Sharpies. I ended up just putting a Sharpie in every pocket because I was like, I hate looking for the Sharpie. But then I was getting to the end of the gig and all the Sharpies were in the same pocket. So I was like, then that's my Sharpie pocket now because
which pocket?
I naturally put it back there every time.
Which pocket do you have interest? Which pocket do you use?
It's my inside left pocket. It's just where because Because I like, so if I'm holding the deck in my left hand, I can just reach and take it and hand it to people.
Okay.
So it's just like that's
How about you, Steve? Where'd you keep your Sharpie?
Yeah, inside pockets, and then I always keep one on the outside on my hanging from my belt loop. I'll say my hanging.
Okay, interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah, it's always handy. I always like. I tend to keep like one of my pants pockets just in case.
How
It's
many
always
Sharpies? How many Sharpies? You got?
I think,
But I would keep like any gimmick ones or whatever at the back, and then I would keep like normal too, because people, if you leave them down, people just hate them and all sorts of stuff. I'd always bring like two.
So I always have. I always use the Coinvex Sharpie lid. So when I hand a Sharpie out, I always take the lid off for them and give them the pen.
Mm-hmm.
So then I always get the pen back in my hand, and I put it back, and then I put the pen away. So that's the way I sort of do it. And I very rarely get to do Coinvex these days because, as you know, people just don't carry cash anymore, which is a shame. It's one of my go-to tricks that was for years. So I used to love doing that.
On stage, we do. Steve does Bill and Lemon a lot in his show, and when we were touring the last show, it's like every theater we get to, it's like hopefully someone has some cash.
Yeah, nobody has cash.
He's crazy, isn't it? In fact, Gary was telling me he went to do a coin bend at a gig fairly recently, maybe last year or something, and he got a 2p, and this little kid said to her dad, "What's that?" It's like, I've never seen a coin before. What the hell? That's crazy.
My nephew was out with my grandmother, so his great grandmother, and he wanted to buy something in the shop. So she gave him cash to pay for it, and he started tapping it off the card machine.
That's brilliant.
It's crazy. It's just, it doesn't understand it. Because it's one of the things that's interesting, I find, with people not carrying coins, is that you can bring like gimmicked coins into things more readily. That while before, when everyone had coins, I'd feel weird not having my shell be a euro or my double header being a euro. But now, because nobody carries coins, I can be like, oh, this is American $50. It's just a bit bigger so people can see. And it's like, okay, because having a coin is weird. So why not have a Chinese coin or an American coin?
I've never really bothered, never really worried about that. If you're gonna walk around with ropes, cards, and sponge balls in your pockets, then why not have a coin as well? Do you know what I mean? Or an American. I use big sort of silver dollars for my coin work. So nobody's ever questioned it really. I don't think. Sometimes I want to look at them and they're curious to see what they feel like and look like and stuff. But I don't think anybody's ever said, why are you using them? You just don't give them the. I think it goes back to what Steve said earlier. If you're confident and everything's sort of effortless, then I don't think people. It's like using gimmick cards and anything gimmick really. People just don't question. Do you know that the only thing that people ever question me about it being gimmicked is when I do fiber optics and people think there's magnets in the ropes and it's obviously just sleight of hand, So you can't have the ropes back out to them if you want to, and that's the only time that I ever get that. Is people saying that to me. Mad, isn't it?
I even find like I use the Penguin Mark deck as like my go-to deck all the time, and they're my giveaways. If someone signs it, they can keep it. I leave the decks behind. It's like they're the most obviously marked deck in the world, but nobody ever looks at them. Nobody cares.
I don't think I've seen them actually.
They're just really like. This is one. So like I don't know if it'll show up there, but in the center of that card,
right. I've got 5.
There's 5 clubs in the center there, and there's 5 clubs on the side as well.
Yeah, they're clear as day. Yeah, they are.
It says it on the card, and like it's only a fiber deck if you buy a brick. So I'm like, that's just my deck now. So
bicycles are approaching that now for a deck of normal bikes, and they don't fall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm like, I might as well just use. If I'm going to have a deck, especially doing mentalism stuff, why I have so many Sharpies, I might as well have a marked deck because you never know when someone's going to do something. So
it's true.
Get going.
I've never used one really. I've bought loads, and it's one of them things. I just bought them and bought it like wallets. I've bought every wallet going at one time and another. And I've got a drawer full of them, and I use the same Jerry O'Connell wallet that I've used for the last God knows how many years.
Yeah.
I carry around the Orphic wallet as my everyday wallet, and then I just call their card and peek. I'm just like, I don't need the wallet, but it's always nice to know I have it.
I've never done anything with the Peak wallet either. And I know people get amazing reactions, and I've bought a few Peak wallets. I've got Stealth Assassin, and there's what's that guy over there who does the really nice leather work, Gerard's.
Gerard Carney, the secret tannery stuff. Yeah, he's got some really nice
his stuff's great, and I've got one of his Jack's wallets, and it's brilliant. I love it. It's a really super cool. Never used it. I've played around with it, and I've always, and it's weird because I don't worry about stuff when I'm doing magic, but when it's like mind reading, I always think, well, if you're going to write something down, take a card out, write something down, and then put it back in the wallet. And I don't know, I've always worried about that, and I've seen people get the most. I was out one night with D. Christopher, and he had somebody in tears because he was telling them about the person they were thinking about was their mom and all this type of thing, and he was that moved. This guy, it just moved him to tears. So I know how powerful it can be. It's amazing. I've never got around to doing it.
Good thing when you're networking, if there's other corporates around. I know people don't really carry business cards as much, but you'd be surprised some of the old school guys still do. You ask them for their card. So you'd say, "Oh, is there a movie you like or something? Oh, what? Just think of your favorite movie. Write it down. I'll go check it out or write something." So then when you take their card, it makes sense to take their card.
Right.
And then when you peek it, you're not going to give the card back to them either.
No, I mean that makes sense, but
so that flows.
Most people take their own business card, don't they?
And
and then put it back in the wallet. Which doesn't make sense, but what you just said makes perfect sense. In fact, I'm doing a trade show next weekend, and next week. I might try that.
As long as they have a blank back card or anything, it'll work. But a few people might offer you cards then, and you'll get different cards or whatever.
Yeah, well, yeah. I've got, and then I can give all the cards to the client. When I finish.
Yeah.
I always like going "Oh, can you write this down?" It's not that I don't trust you; I don't trust anybody. And then I always say as well, "Can you write down in black capital letters?" I'll explain why in a minute, and it's so I can read it. But then in their head, I always go, "Can you imagine a ball bouncing along letter to letter as a ball bounces in those sing-along cartoons where the ball bounces from word to word? Can you do that in your head?" And it's basically I've now gotten them to write it down because I'm getting them to visualize their own handwriting later on in the process. So it's it kind of justifies it, but also it's just people lie, so write it down.
A good line as well is just for on stage, write in black capital letters because I'm going to have to show it to people afterwards, and it just justifies that I'm going to show it to him,
And do you so the sort of I work very quickly, really quickly, and that all comes from when I started. I said to you earlier, I started doing gigs in the early 2000s. And my first regular gig was at TGI Fridays in Birmingham City Centre, and it was their flagship store at the time. So I was doing table hopping every Saturday night, 3 hours, and this place was just rammed. So you just never stopped all night. And I'm thinking you'd probably do, I don't know, maybe 40 to 50 tables a night, probably somewhere like that. Because as soon as the food comes, you're gone. Mm-hmm. And I just developed this habit of working really fast-paced, punchy visual magic. So that's probably why I've never gone down that path, because I just work too quick for it.
All the time. Yeah,
I feel very alien in the middle of my set.
Yeah, a lot of the mentalism, I find that because on stage I'm pure mentalism. That's all I do. But in close up, I do mainly magic with bits of mentalism, because it is that point. If you're at a really loud banquet table, it's difficult to get people to pay attention to a longer psychological piece and stuff like that. So it's just oh, you just want visual stuff. Okay, cool. Let's just do that. But sometimes at a drinks reception, you can have a bit more time. I find that
drinks reception you can. But again, with drinks reception, people get, you'll be halfway through a routine, and then all of a sudden a new person will come and join, and then the rest of the group just go, and their attention is broken,
Yeah.
So that's why I tend to do stuff that's really quick. Take a card. It's not on the top. Bang. It's on the. Do you know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah.
And then I've started, like I said, I've started doing a little chop cup routine in the hands in drinks reception as well now, rather than tables. And then I took away the problem of people not being able to see from the other side of the table and stuff. So I've just dropped it from my set, really.
Yeah, I really like that sort of like the drinks reception environment. I think it's like I much prefer to table hopping. I find tables.
Weird, isn't it? I prefer tables. And I did a corporate gig a couple of weeks ago. It's about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was 3 other magicians there, and all 3 of them said, that they preferred doing the drinks reception. And this gig, it was just tables. We didn't do any drinks reception at all. And they were moaning. So, one of them was saying, "Oh, you don't get the same reactions and blah blah blah." And I've always liked working tables. Really, the hard bit is just getting everybody's attention in the first place.
Yeah.
And there's ways around that, and sometimes yourself, wedding or a sales thing or wherever, they haven't seen each other for ages, so they're deep in conversation, these people, and it's trying to break into their conversation to let them know that you're there, because very often once they know that you're there, they want to watch you. It's just that they're not aware when you've walked up to the table, so it's just all that. It's there, isn't it? But once you've got their attention, unless it's really loud, as you just mentioned, in which case it's difficult because they can't hear you, can they?
Yeah, and there's a giant centerpiece in the middle that blocks the view.
Well, do you know what? You know what I do with them? I pick them up and put them on the side of them, put them on the floor.
Yeah,
I do. And I just say to them, "Would you mind? So you can all see. Would you mind if I move? If it's like a really massive one, and then I'll pick it up and just pop it on the floor so everybody can see. And then when I've finished, I'll put it back, and it works perfectly for me. I mean, I'm a bit of a cheeky side, but it works fine, And I always used to, and you're doing this, aren't you? Like that, trying to look at that person, and you sort of end up moving around the table a little bit. But it's not always possible to move around the table because, yourself, when it's a busy gig, they cram them tables in, and you've got staff coming around serving food and drinks and stuff. So you don't have that space. So you find a space where you can work. Sometimes there might be there's usually like a natural gap, isn't there, where you can get. Mind you, I've seen a lot of magicians. It's always next to the woman with a low cut top in it.
I always get there and I watch and go, where did the waiters go when they got to that table? Okay, that's where I'm going to go, because it's like they know the gaps.
Yes.
That's. They set it up for themselves. So,
it takes ages to pick these things up, doesn't it? It's like who's going to be the loudest, most fun table, or the table that you want to get to before they've had too much to drink. And if it's a wedding, it's the table that's furthest away from the bride and groom.
Yeah, always.
Because there's a reason that they're furthest away.
Mad bastards put them down the back.
Yeah, exactly. So
you have the family close and stuff.
You'll have a table where there's like everybody's 90, so you don't want to start there. And then there's a table, but the one table where I want to start is that table, because they're going to be lively and they're going to be loud, and when you get them going, it sets the thing for the vibe for the room, doesn't it?
Chain reaction then after that.
Yeah, absolutely. You walk up to a table and die on your arse in the first 5 minutes, and it could spread if you're not too careful. So it's another top tip. There you go.
I find as well when you get to a place, especially if you're performing during the meal, because you obviously don't really want to interrupt people while eating as much as you can. I always found going to seeing where the waiters go to first and go to the opposite side of the room, so I can get as many tables done before the start.
You can usually not stop working if you do that. It depends on the service of the place, doesn't it? There's some hotels that I've worked at. I mean, bizarrely, one of there's the Monarch Suite in the NEC in Birmingham. It's massive. It holds, I think it's about 1,400 guests in there for a dinner. It's absolutely massive. I was doing a gig there one night, and there was a car up the corner of the room as a raffle prize, and I never even noticed it until they announced that the prize was a car, and I was like, really? This room's honestly, it's huge. But they serve the whole room. It's so well drilled and so well oiled, and they've got so many staff that they serve everybody's main course in no time at all, So that does happen. But generally, it's great advice, David. Is just start to the opposite end of the service. And they typically always start at table one, don't they? The top table.
Yeah.
And work their way
backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those as you're saying, those things you learn. And you were saying that like we can see from some of the tricks you released, like anagram and even with the cucumber and cloak, that you have that sort of cheeky thing when you're performing. Was that always like part of your performance, or is that like developed
It's
over the years?
evolved and developed over the years. Yeah, and you become more. I don't know. I think you get your own style, don't you? And you get more comfortable in your own skin. I think that's always been me privately when I'm out with my mates and stuff like that. I've always had that kind of sense of humour, but I always kept it away from my work. And then I realised that the two things are the two things are the same, really. So yeah. I mean, anagram is just a great example. It's such a funny. Have you performed it yourself yet? Or?
Yeah, I've done it a few times. I've done it more like friends and family events more recently because but I have a few weddings coming up now during the summer, and I've got it ready for because especially the friends of the bride and groom and stuff like that. You can always spot the group who are gonna hit.
It's absolutely yeah. It's a funny bit. And I think it'd be good. I haven't done it myself because I don't do much stand up. I've done it in a stand up at a convention, but I think it'd be good for a stand up spot as well, depending on the size of the room. Just using a different way of revealing it at the end,
Yeah, because there's so many ways you can present it. Because even as like that sort of mental magic thing, you can go like, oh. It really tells me how you think, what you pick up in these anagrams and all that sort of stuff. As if it's like a Rorschach test or something like that.
Yeah.
You can really play it up and then hit them with the gag at the end.
Oh yeah, it's a funny bit. I mean, when I first got my prototypes for that, I got booked for it was a memorial gig. So this guy who booked me, his mum had passed away, and they were having like a party to remember her, So there was a lot of people from the care home where she lived, bless her, and all this type of thing, and some families and stuff. And it was in like a village hall, and of course I've got this prototype of anagram, and I'm thinking, well, I've got to try it. I've just had it. I've got to try it. I've got to see how it goes, because I never release anything unless I've worked it. I've never done that. I've always gone out and performed stuff before I've released it, and I thought I've got to go. So of course the first table. And they were all like 80-odd-year-old women. And I thought, sod it, and I did it. And they were absolutely wetting themselves. I thought it was hilarious, So I thought, yeah, I'm onto a winner with this,
Yeah, I have a hen coming up actually in 2 weeks. So I'm like, they booked me through tarot, but I'll also have that with me.
Yeah. And you'll always get someone at the someone who's a bit medical or wherever in the room will get spine rather than the other one. And you can still make it fly because everybody else at the table goes, and then so yeah,
because you could always like just completely reverse the guy being like, oh, spine, how innocent of you. No, it's penis.
yeah, absolutely.
It's penis. Grow up. Anyway, just getting through it, because I do think that thing of being like yourself, as you're saying, it's like you do get that more because we all probably imitate people or try to just get the tricks to work to begin with, but it's like I'm quite like sarcastic and self-deprecating, and like that just comes into the magic. It just comes out of you in the end.
I think so. It's where I'm just trying to think when remember when Darren Brown first sort of burst onto the screens, and then everybody who's sort of gets into mentalists, they're sort of performing exactly the same way he did on TV, which was ironic, really, because Darren, when he's performing live, he doesn't perform anything like he performs on TV, does he?
No.
He's really funny and engaging and everything else. And then you've got all these guys out there being Darren clones, and I think that's happened a few times. There was when David Blaine, of course, there's a lot of people who have been Blaine clones and sort of putting no personality into it and stuff like that. So I think it's important to be yourself and just work to your strengths, really. If you're not funny, don't try and be funny. Try and entertain them in a different way. And you can still use funny tricks, can't you? Like cloak and anagram.
Available from your favorite magic. Because I do think that's so true. Because like so many people try to be like, oh, I have to be funny, and like there are funny tricks that'll get you through it. But again, it's like it can be okay to be. your own sense of humor, I think, is important in it as well.
Not everybody's funny, but you can see you see people, and I've seen people who aren't funny, but they're charming and they're engaging, and that's the thing, and that's all you've got to be. It's just polite, pleasant, engaging. You don't have to be funny. You don't have to be, as long as you're pleasant and polite. If they like you, then they're going to like your magic and everything else, don't they? You know what I mean? If they think you're a great big dick the minute you walk up to the table, then you could be the best magician in the world, and it's just not going to fly.
Yeah, me and Steve have the opposite problem. We keep trying to be dark and mysterious, and we can't stop taking the piss. It's like I remember one of the first times my wife seen me perform. She was like, "In your head, you're this like dark, mysterious performer," and she's like, "You're not." She's just like, "You're flamboyantly sarcastic." And
it's like the magician's wife bring you back down to earth every time, mate.
Yeah, she's just like, just go at what you do best. So I'm like, okay, I'll just lean into that. But it's because like I was like, oh, I want to be like Luke Chimay, I want to be like Darren, I want to be like that. But then once I got up on stage, I couldn't help but just
the real you comes out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just speaks.
I'm a sarcastic bugger when I'm doing stand-up. I don't do very much of it these days, but I'm terrible when I do stand-up. I don't know why. I don't know. I'm much worse than I am when I'm doing close-up. It's terrible. And if I lecture as well, I can be a little bit sarcastic, but not too much. A little bit.
If something pops into my head, I just have to say it because I'm like, it's probably like if it's funny, great, I'll use it again. If not, no one will remember. So I'm just gonna go.
Yeah. I've stepped over that line a few times, and happily I've got away with it. But sometimes it's a bit touching.
You can
be. You're a bit like, shit. Did I just say that?
Oh god, yeah.
Four people laughed though, so fuck it. It mightn't be that.
Well, do you want to hear one of the best ones I did?
Go for it.
It's a little bit rude. So it was a corporate event a few years ago, and I got there, and it was a really lovely summer's evening, and everybody was outside on the patio outside having drinks rather than inside, So I went out and I'm sort of milling around, and there was 3 people stood way away from everybody else having a cigarette. So I went over, introduced myself, and I was like, oh, this is like being behind the bike sheds at school. This is the naughty corner. And they started laughing. And I looked at the bloke and I said, are you going to get me to smell your finger in a minute, mate? And as soon as I'd said it, I thought, oh, I can't believe you've just said that. And all 3 of them just started pissing themselves laughing. And I thought, oh, thank God for that. But that could have gone badly.
You were in the right group, at least.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. But they thought it was funny. Well, I think they did. I never got any complaints back about it, so I think I was all right.
Yeah. Sure, Steve, at Christmas, you told a load of people at the bar who wouldn't shut up to shut the fuck up.
I did. I told them to shut the fuck up. Yeah, I had to.
On my
because there was like 100. There was like 150 people in the room, and there was like 8 people at the bar just shouting, and like you could see the other people kind of going. Looking around, kind of like, oh, we want them to shut up, and I was like, I've got a microphone, I have to tell them. Like it's as simple as. And then the rest of people cheered, and the show went on, and it was fine.
Yeah, good. And you have to do that. Sometimes you have to, you have to put the hammer. You have to tell them, don't you? I had a guy once. I walked up to a table at a golf 2 years ago, and this, as I walked up, I was like, "Hi, I'm Chris. I'm the magician." Blah blah. Whatever I said, and this guy was. Oh, you're not going to try and entertain us with that accent, are you? Like really snooty and stuff, And I thought, and I can't remember. I was obviously pissed off with what he'd said to me, but I could have quite easily sort of really ripped into him and made him look like this big. And I thought, now, do you know what? I said, and I just looked at him and says, yeah, I'll give it a go, and I just cracked on. And I made sure I hit him with some really strong stuff. And at the end, he apologised for his opening line. And he took my card, and I'm pretty sure he booked me for his son's wedding. So, yeah, it's learning how to deal with things like that, isn't it? I could have quite easily insulted the guy, made him look stupid. But I turned it around and got a gig out of it. But, yeah, when you've got 8 people at the bar ruining it for everybody else, then... and that's the best way.
Like the organisers had tried to like calm them down a bit, and I saw one of the girls going over, and you could see the other. But as soon as I said it, it got a laugh, kind of a thing, And we just went down with it. Everyone was. It was a free bar. There was a free bar for like 2 hours before I got there. It was fucking mad. You know?
That's that's just like the worst. That's like the biggest nightmare gig ever, isn't it? You know, they're doing stand up like a 45-minute show in front of a corporate audience who've got a free bar. I mean, that's why I just want to do close up
in Ireland.
In anywhere, or it just seems like the worst gig ever. You know.
Yeah, it was only the first like 5-10 minutes. It was okay, but yeah, once that happened, it all balanced out and it was fine.
It's about showing your authority a bit as well, I think, because it's similar when you approach a group or approach a table. It's a similar thing on stage that, like, it was one of the things I found that when I started just doing stand-up comedy for a while with a bit of magic, but then just a stand-up. And some of the things that the other comedians would say that like they found baffling was how I could just stand on stage in silence. But when you're doing magic a lot, like especially a mind reading, I'm standing in silence for like 30 seconds pretending to do something. But to them, the idea of standing on stage in silence, but I could just stand there until people notice. And then it's like they're giving me the attention because it's like, I can wait. And then like that, those sort of things can just get the audience to pay attention to you.
It's a long time, isn't it? 30 seconds.
Yeah. Can feel like hours.
Yeah, it can.
It can be 30 seconds to me even, and then I watch it back in video. I'm like, oh, it's 3. Damn it, I need to do more.
Yeah.
I got to the point recently. I was doing something. I was like, I need to slow down. So I just had like my mind reading process was counting, just to make sure that I wasn't rushing it or something like that. Especially like with mind reading or like pseudo inductions, you want to make it look like you're actually doing something, and you can go and close your eyes. That was long enough, and then you're like, no, I gotta like down.
It's quite a sobering thing, isn't it? Watching yourself back, you know, when you watch a video of yourself performing, and then you hear you saying certain things over and over again, and you just cringe. You know, I'll say okay a lot when I'm performing. And I watch the videos back, and I'm just like, I've said it again. I can't believe I've said it.
I've started recording like the audio just on my phone in my inside pocket. You know, put it by your phone, but I record the audio so afterwards I can listen to the show. And then you like watching it is one thing, you know, because it's good to watch it at times. But I think listening to it, you can actually hear when jokes actually drop or when moments of astonishment actually happen, because you can kind of pinpoint them a bit better, I think. So so I've started doing that a bit more. And like when I'm driving home from the gig, I'll listen to the show back. And then I'll make kind of mental notes like that worked, that doesn't work there, but it will work here. You know, kind of.
Yeah, it's good. I think everybody should do it at least once or twice, and just, you know, it's quite like I said, it's quite sobering the first few times you do it, you know. And I don't tend to watch everything back, but I've started editing my own stuff together now, so I have to. And you just sit there going, oh.
I think the thing with me with the audio was like, would it play? Like it's magic and it's visual. It is meant to be visual as an art form. But would it play on the radio? You know, that kind of way. Would it play? Is there enough? Am I describing enough what's going on that you can kind of get it? So that's why I started doing it. Comedians do it all the time. And I just thought it might work for magic. So I started doing it for the last like couple of, probably about 10 shows, I suppose. Especially the touring ones.
And do you listen to it on the way home?
Yeah. Yeah, I listened to it back, and then I was like making kind of notes or whatever, kind of the next day, and then listening to, that bit works, and that bit, you know, would work better here. Or if I said this earlier, it would make more sense for this bit, and that kind of.
Especially during the show, if you're giving someone instructions and they don't follow your instructions right,
that was it exactly.
You're going like, I need to read, because there's a bit during Steve's show at the intermission where people have to write down stuff and put it in bolds, and we noticed a few times that like we'd go like draw a picture, write a word, or write a number, and then we'd look through the billets afterwards, and some people did all 3, even though it was an option that you can do one of them. It's like something people aren't understanding something, you know. So then, like, we listening to what you're actually the instructions you're giving, because if people mess up, no matter what, it's your fault.
Like, yeah, of course, yeah,
absolutely, 100%, yeah. If they haven't understood what you're saying, that's on you, not them, innit?
Yeah. Because even if they're intentionally trying to mess you up, you pick them. So it's like, I need to learn how to.
Yeah. That's true too.
Yeah. You shouldn't have picked them. Yeah.
Some people will just kind of, if they're that kind of personality though, but like if you're new starting off, that could throw you massively. But like if somebody tries to have a go at you or whatever and has a bit of crack, or I want to shuffle them again and all this kind of jazz, as a professional, it won't throw you. It'll make it funnier. Because like I've had guys like shuffle a deck of cards And when it's all shuffled, he's like, "You'll never find my card." And I just go, "Yeah, I won't." And I just stick it in my pocket and continue with something else. Just and just leave it at that. And your man's just like, she's left with his dick in his hand. He has nowhere to go. So he was like, "Yeah, he didn't find my card. I told you I wouldn't find it, and whatever." And I might find it later on, or I'll take it out in another trick and put it in my shoe or whatever. But like at that moment, I'm not going to dead because that's what he wants. He's not getting what he wants,
Yeah. It's good advice, great advice actually.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever they say to me, "Can I shuffle them?" I've got it where I want it, and I just palm it and hand the pack. I'll stand there for 5 minutes with the card palmed in my hand,
Yeah.
And then you take it back and just load it and carry on with what I was going to do.
And depending on the group as well, like I might palm it off and even flash it to like one or two other people while I'm just saying, yeah, give them a shuffle, I'm like, and then it's more like I'll take it back, then I'll do a couple of more shuffles to like get rid of it again, and then I'll have him find it on the classic force or something. So it still fools them, but they're kind of like, "Oh yeah, he got one over on Dave. Dave's being an ass, whatever."
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, Dave, you baldy prick.
Fuck you with your hair. I had someone a few years back. I was on stage, had them write down a name, peeked it through an envelope, and was doing the reveal, and they're like, "No," and I was like, "The first letter is D. I know it is." And he was like, "No," and I was like, "It's the name, whatever." And he's like, "Oh, that was the name I wrote down, not the name I'm thinking of." And I was like, "Oh, so you're a dick. Give him a round of applause." She's like, "What else are you gonna do?"
Yeah.
I've had similar things to that happen before, and you just there's no way you can sort of just get around it or you just can't do anything, can you? You just carry on. Just like you
move
said.
on.
Yeah,
move on.
I had and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but I've got plenty of stories like this, so don't worry. The other week I was doing a thing where I was doing a variation of the Steve Cook trick swindle, and I just had a massive brain fart in the middle of it, and the spectator had ended up with the thing with the £20 note in, and I was just like, just blah blah blah, and I just picked him up and said, "We'll get back to that later," and I popped him in my pocket, and then just did a card trick and left.
I love that.
That's great. That tells me everything I need to know about you. Thank you.
Yeah, and just don't mention it again, and leg it. And they listen. I'm sure they probably now they're still thinking, "I wonder what was going to happen with that." The wallet,
I was doing a gig recently, and me and Steve always talked about the biddle trick. Where in the middle of the deck, and I was like, "I haven't done it in ages. I'm going to do the biddle trick."
We give each other shit. Like if you're doing a gig, you better do the biddle trick.
Yeah, I stole back the second card and said the fourth card, and I was like, "Crap." So I did the thing. The card vanished. It had 4 cards left, and I was like, "Boom!" And they're like, "That's not my card." And I was like, "That's not your card." And I was like, "Oh shit!" in my head. And they were like, "Yeah, my card was the 10 of diamonds." And I just went, "Oh, not the 10 of diamonds. 10 of diamonds always messes me up." And then just went into an ambitious / forcing routine where no matter what I did, the 10 of diamonds would mess it up for me, and it would be appearing all over the place. And they were like, "Oh my God, I thought that I messed up the magician, but he knew what was happening the whole time." And I was just like in panic jazz mode.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I've jazzed something when something like that's happened, and you come out with something that you end up using all the time. It's like Steve just said there about classic forcing.
The card back to them.
Yeah, I do that all the time now. I do it in the middle of my ambitious card routine. And so I say, well, it's not really an ambitious card routine, but a signed card routine.
Yeah.
So, I'll find it once, twice, and then I'll produce it from my pocket, and then I'll just say to them, "You're going to find it now." And I say, "Just put your finger out and just touch a card," and then they're like, "No way." And all of a sudden, it's just like a really powerful thing. And
you can throw in a bit of a kind of just like how we rehearsed, and then people are like, do you know the magician? Or you can see that kind of conversation happening then as you walk away, which is great,
It's a really, and the other thing I've done a few times as well is I'll get them to sort of cup their hands together like this, and I'll just palm the card and then just reach over and just produce it from inside their hands as well. Like, what? It's just little jazz moments like that. You do them, and then you just think, "Oh, that worked. That was good. That got a good reaction."
Yeah. I found as well, like one of the moves, the second phase of my ambitious, I do is you riffle off the back, drop one card, and catch a break on it. And I kept dropping it constantly when I was first learning it. I was like, I can't get this because I was trying to do it fast and stuff. So I was like, I'm going to paint it red. So it's still to this day in my second phase, the ambitious. I do my ambitious really quickly in the first phase. I'm like, was that too fast? I'm like, I'll do it again. I'll do it in slow motion. And then I
used to
just
do that,
start moving as slow as physically possible. But that gives me all the time to get my break. Because I can and then I just start barely moving the card until people laugh. And then I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm getting paid by the hour. And then I carry on. But it's like, instead of slowing something down because I needed to, I just painted it red. I need to do this slower for a while. So I'll just make that the presentation.
And then you got a better reaction from slowing it down.
Yeah, and I got a gag, and it's built in now, and I just do that constantly now. That even though I don't need to do it slowly anymore, I'm like, I'm not going to do it faster because that beat of going, I'm like, I do it in slow motion, and they're all staring, and the card is moving 0.5 millimeter every 4 seconds type thing as I'm sliding it across the deck to put it in the middle, and I'm just like, I'll stand there all day until someone laughs. Eventually it's going to get awkward. Or someone would say that's too slow. So you just wait for it. But I love those sort of things of the jazzing with it. Another jazz routine I love is one I was like, again, I think I messed up and didn't find their card. And I was like, oh, but finding your card is easy. It's what a magician does. So now I have a whole routine that the routine is I'm not going to find your card. And then at the end, it's like, well, if you're a magician, you'd be impressed. But it doesn't impress you, color change, there's your card. And then you just carry on. But it's all those sort of things that they all just come out of messing up and having to jazz my way out of it.
Yeah. Definitely. And yeah, I mean, jazzing it's a great thing. And just sometimes I'll walk up to get a pack of cards out without having any idea of what trick I'm going to do when I start,
Oh, yeah.
Just name a card for me and then name it, and you just call the card and go into something else, and just sort of, force it on them or bring it out of your wallet or wherever it is, just having no clear path, and it just keeps it fresh for you, the performer, and the spectators. They love it as well, so it's all good.
It keeps you in the moment, I think, as well. Especially if you're doing 20 tables or something like that, it's very easy to just switch into autopilot by the 10th table because you're just so tired at this stage. You're just going through it. So just having someone pick a card and be like, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. So they're show it to all your friends, and you're thinking, will I control it to the top or the bottom? Well, I'll control it to the top, and then we'll see. And then in the end, it's like, oh, it was in my wallet or it was in my shoe. But when they picked the card, I had no idea what I was going to do.
Do you have I always have an ending that I want to get to, but it's just how you as you're getting there, isn't it?
But it's especially I always have in my set I have my openers and I have my closers, and then in the middle I kind of judge it off how people are.
What do you open with at a table?
At a table, I've opened with Wave quite a bit as just a good thing for someone of just going I usually go up to the group to introduce myself. And then I go, I actually have a prediction about you. And that always gets someone's attention because they're like, he has a prediction. And then I just go into Wave. So that's a good one. Or just I have a series of...
I don't know Wave. I don't think.
Max Maven's B-Wave.
Thing.
Yeah. So right. I just use that a lot. But I also have... I just do a series. I have a series of color changes and vanishes that I do. And I always... open with I do that and I go I'll do something proper now because for me that's warming up, but my wife tells me I'm showing off, and then I just go into whatever I think I'm watching to see who's reacting at that point, and then go, okay, they'll be good for my ambitious card routine or something like that. But I think trying to get it's always that interesting thing, or I like undercutting myself when I approach a table too of hi, I'm David, I'm magician, mind reader, all around slightly weird person is an intro I use, or I'm going to show you why nobody plays cards with me. It's either this or my personality. We'll have a vote at the end. And that vote at the end bit came because someone said that. They're like, don't worry, we'll tell you at the end. And I was like, I'm taking that. Thank you.
Yeah. Nicked. Yeah, how about you, Steve? What you open with at the table?
A very kind of card stuff, ultimate transpose and stuff like that, or even just a pick a card, a peek card, quick reveal, or even a lot of the time now I'm doing chip on the shoulder or chip under, or something really fast and visual like that. I find kind of works for me. I play the kind of character like a magician and escape artist. My hands are super fast kind of thing, so that's kind of the angle with a lot of that stuff. So I do stuff like that. Some ring stuff as well. But yeah, primarily it's a very quick card thing. I wouldn't have like the thing about we're talking about like having like a structure though, and you can jazz it is you never spread out a deck of cards and then you think it's going to be like one person, but then like 4 people have picked a card all of a sudden, and you can't be like, oh no, this is just for one person. So now without you even wanting to, now you're doing a multiple selection, that kind of way. So I just let people kind of do anything. A lot of times I give them the deck and I say spread out the deck and let somebody pick a card, and I let them do all that. And then once they take the card out, I had them both sign that card, and I'll take the deck back, and then I'll control it. But I like to be like very hands off and let them. I was like, I don't use sleight of hand kind of a thing,
What do you like to open with, Chris?
For years, I've opened with fiber optics. For years and years and years. But I'm slowly phasing that out now. And I've started using Dead Cert, which is one of my releases that probably not many people have heard of because it sort of slipped under the radar a little bit. It's a bit of a gag card. It's a bit like the baby gag, but it's you get them to name so you force a card and then you say name a historical figure. So name a historical figure for me.
George Washington.
There you go.
George Washington. And you say in my pocket, I've got a picture of George Washington holding your card, and you bring it out, and it's a picture of a skeleton holding the card, and it goes down really well. But I've got in the UK, there's 2 names that come up all the time. One's Winston Churchill, and the other one's Henry VIII, and they just come out all the time. You still get the odd ones like George Washington, Adolf Hitler occasionally, and things like that, right? But I've had 2 of those cards with one's got Churchill on the back and one's got Henry VIII on the back. So if they name either of them, I'll bring the appropriate one out, and you get the big and he gets a massive laugh. And with the 3 of hearts, and then I turn it round and it's got Churchill on the back, and they honestly you could just peel them off the floor after. It's so strong, but it's just a genuine. There's no force or anything. It's just you're relying on the fact that you're gonna hit. And I would say I hit about 6.5 times out of 10, probably.
Right.
That's great. And like, go for the miracle when there's a chance of it. It's always.
I did a corporate the other week, and I think 5 times I did it, and 5 times, but in the gig they said Henry VIII, no Churchill, and the 6th time I did it in the green room to one of the band, and he said Henry VIII. So I hit 7 times out of 7 that night. It was unbelievable. Yeah. And sometimes you'll do it all night and you don't hit once. But But I've got a 2.0 version coming soon, which I haven't revealed to anybody yet. So I'll do it on air. But so you're the first people to know about this, really. So the other thing, again, and this all ties in nicely to what we've been talking about. A few times when I've done this, I've said name a historical figure, and and somebody said Anne Boleyn. And of course, where do you go there? It's clearly not Anne Boleyn because it's got a head on, right? So now I've got the card, and on one side it's the skeleton holding the 3 of hearts. So I'll get the reveal, and I say, last week somebody said Anne Boleyn, and that gets a laugh. And then I turn it round, and I've got the same skeleton, but with its head missing, holding the 3 of hearts. I've got her as well. It's funny. It's funny.
That is funny.
But you're losing out on that miracle of having Henry VIII or whatever. So I'm going to put mine in an envelope and just write it on the back of the envelope, and then if I hit, I'll just turn it round and show it on the back of the envelope.
Yeah, nice. You could do some gag there about Henry VIII and beheading the wives, and there's probably some little kind of linguistic thing you can say there or something as well, maybe.
I'll just play it. So I just force the card, right? And then say, I've got a picture of a historical figure, and that's all I say. And for some reason, but I do it quick. I'll make them think quickly. Yeah. I don't want to give them too long to think about it. I say, funny enough, the other week I did this, and it was a young guy, and I said, "Name a historical figure." He went, "Chewbacca." Yeah.
What's a Wookiee skeleton like? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, like Henry VIII, apparently.
That's brilliant. Like, somebody's not good at the old history there.
No. But
it's great as well by saying historical figure, they're clearly dead. You know what I mean? So it makes it's without saying it. It's great.
Right. It took me a while to come with that because I started off saying name a famous person in history, and I think I've tried a few different things since I've been doing it. And I used to still get. I mean, some of the weirdest things I had. Name a well-known person in history, I think was where my starting point, and somebody said Harry Styles, and I'm like, yeah, but he's not a famous person in history. He says, well, he is. You don't hear about him anymore, do you? And I thought, okay. So eventually I ended up doing, I've stumbled on historical figure. And then now, like I said, if you say to name a historical figure like that, they have to come up with somebody quickly and
fast.
And that's increasing your chances of hitting. I did the other week at a gig, it was an American guy and he said JFK. And I had to stop myself because when I pulled out the skeleton, the guy looked a little bit. I could tell he laughed, but I could tell it wasn't like. And so, like I was going to say, you can't see the bullet hole because that was on the back of the head.
You could have been like.
But I had to hit the pause button there for once.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been doing that. The ropes have been slowly filtered out, and I've started doing that.
I still feel like, you're thinking of a card now. Inside my pocket, I have a picture of a very special person. Would you be impressed if I have a picture of your grandmother inside my pocket?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Like,
yeah, but what if they're still alive?
You should go for an old person.
There you go.
I've got a picture.
That's the mentalism way of thinking. Is there a John in the room?
You get it going. Great at a seance.
Has to be a John.
Yeah. Honestly, in fact, I think I've got. Let me find. I've got it on my phone as a screensaver. Hang on. There you go. So,
so it can be in your EDC on your phone.
Very good.
It's a good one, and then this is the.
Oh, cool.
So that's handling.
That's great.
Very good.
That's such a funny idea.
Well, that is just. I mean, it just looks comical. It just gets a big. And I'm not sure whether it's the gag. The gag's quite funny, but the skeleton just looks funny as well. So the whole thing just. So it's on like it's a card about this big, and it just sits in my inside jacket pocket. So it's quite visual for tables. It's good.
Tables are a bit like a mini stage show in that way. We're like
they're cabaret, yeah. 100%.
And I think that's why a lot of close-up workers don't like doing them because they get used to doing like really close hand stuff. I mean, I used to do holiday parks years ago and do like cabaret and stuff like that. And then I did kid shows for years as well. So you get used to working an audience, and as you rightly say, a table of 10, 12 people is a small audience, and you're doing a mini cabaret every time for 10 minutes, aren't you? That's absolutely what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're just coming up over the hour mark now, so I'm going to bring up the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we have had some funny performance stories, but is there one disaster of a performance or trick where things maybe started off well and went quickly downhill from there?
I mean, there's a few. I've been doing it for a long time now, so there's a few. So the one that always springs to mind, I'm going to tell you two. So the one that always springs to mind was I was fairly new-ish. I'd been doing restaurants for about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. And I'd got a residency at a Frankie and Benny's restaurant. Now, I don't know if you have those in Ireland, but in the UK, it's a bit like an American Italian diner type thing, like a chain. Yeah. Okay, so I was doing this one every week and got to know the staff. One of the assistant managers, she said to me the one week, she said, "I'm here next week with my family." She said, "So can you come over? It's so and so's birthday, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." So I went over there. I made a big fuss of him. I did loads of magic for the table and everything. It was all great. And at the end, I used to carry at that point. I haven't used it for years. I had a Viking finger chopper a Hades finger chopper in my pocket. That's right. So I said, right, we'll do one more thing, and I pulled it out, and I says, no, it looked like this, and I said, I just need a volunteer, and I went, you sir, to this guy, and he went, oh no, and everybody started laughing, and he come up in his hands, and he got about 2 fingers left. He'd lost them all in an industrial accident. He says, I can't lose any more. And the whole table were just wetting themselves laughing, but I hadn't noticed. This guy he got about 2 fingers. All his other fingers he'd lost in a stamping accident or something in the factory. So that was a good one. And the other one I used to do before the credit crunch in 2008. Was it 2007, 2008?
Yeah.
I used to do a load of work for a bank, Lloyd's TSB. Was it Lloyd's TSB? Yeah, I think it was Lloyd's TSB. And I was doing gigs for them maybe 2-3 times every month. It was a great contract. I was doing loads of stuff for them. Anyway, the one night, I'm doing this dinner for him, and the guy who used to book me, he was like the regional director. He said, that guy over there, he says, that's my boss. He says, I want you to go over there and impress him. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I was going to choose a card. He signed it. I was doing my ambitious card routine. Now, he'd finished eating, but his plates were still on the table. And at the end of my ambitious card routine, or towards the end, I always used to do, I still do it occasionally, but not so much. I do a hot shot cut, so I did the hot shot cut, and his card went flying out like that, and I missed it, and it landed smack in his dinner. So I picked it up, and his card's got gravy all over it and everything. This is like the UK wide director for Lloyd's TSB, and that was embarrassing. Yeah. So that's it, really. I mean, there's things where things have gone wrong, but they're not very funny, are they?
It's a situation where a lot of times when things go wrong, you notice and nobody else does. But that dropping stuff in food is just like the worst.
Well, like I said, he had finished eating happily for me. Can you imagine if he was still eating that and it landed in his gravy, And I carried on as if nothing had happened and stuff, but it was quite bad. Yeah, it was embarrassing.
Yeah, it's thinking of it. You don't want to do like an angle Z into their like mashed potatoes or something. It's like, oh, it wouldn't work. It's always those situations where when you're trying to impress the big boss man that you mess up something like that.
Yeah. I think that's the only time I've ever done that. But you ought to get Gary on here because he's got a really killer story about the managing director of a company. And I don't want to spoil it, but it's absolutely hilarious.
Absolutely. Yeah. We definitely need to get him on to hear the story and get it going.
When I was doing that gig, just to remind me with the fingers thing, I was doing a gig there recently, and I had the animal trap card trick thing. And I did the show, and this woman came up to me and she goes, oh, my husband tried that trick at home, but it didn't go very well. And I was like, what? And he's like an old man, and he had no fingers. He was like this. And I was like, oh, and he was like, can I give a testimonial to you? But like, you shouldn't try this at home. And I was like, no, you can't.
I volunteered on stage. It didn't go well.
Yeah. That's exactly what he wanted to say. So funny. But I was a nice guy. He was really funny about it. Like, but the same thing. He was an engineer, and he got caught in a machine.
Yeah. I mean, I felt awful because I always counted people's fingers for ages afterwards whenever I got a volunteer for that. But these are the things that you learn on the job, innit? Nobody ever tells you something like that. Bloody hell, just make sure they've got all the fingers before you start. And he was a good sport and everything. He was great. And trust me, the one person at the whole table to pick on, it was him.
Yeah. It
was even like I asked someone to shuffle, and like they just had their hand in a cast. But I hadn't noticed that the hand was in a cast. And I was like, can you shuffle? No. Like, okay. Can you shuffle?
Imagine if you were like, well, I can.
Yeah, it's all the things. It's like once it wasn't in the sling down by his side, I didn't see his hands. Like that could be someone who is an amputee or something as well. You don't know. Like, so it's always those situations. And then sometimes people who have finger disabilities can actually shuffle really well and stuff like that. So you're like, do you want to? Like, I'm not going to say you can't. But
I never hand out stuff to be shuffled, really, unless they ask. I always find it. I remember once years ago at a corporate event. Was it a corporate? Yeah, I think it was a corporate event. And I walked up to a table, and I was halfway through my performance, and I got the cards out, and this guy says, "Can I show you a trick?" So I went, "Yeah, of course you can." I said, "Stand up then," and he stood up. Right, I handed him the pack of cards. I sat down and I started drinking his wine.
You're like, you've 12 more tables.
Get cracking.
Yeah, just let him carry on with his trick, and why not? I got paid all the same, And he loved it. He loved it. Everybody else thought I was a nice guy for letting me do it, and I got a free glass of wine. So win-win.
Nice.
I always just let people to shuffle at the time. I do the nest of wallets, and then I always finish with a triumph with the clock coming back on the phone. So to give me time to reset the wallets, I hand the deck to someone and go, "You shuffle them," because if you thought opening the wallets was exciting, putting the wallets back together is even more exciting. So then while I'm doing that, they're shuffling, and then I go, "And just keep any card you want," and they're like, "Anyone?" And what's fascinating is they're holding the deck. They could look through and take out one look at the face, but only magicians do that. Spectators take one face down. Even if they look at them, they'll turn them face down and then take one. But then I reference it later when I do like the slap shuffle, being like, "You shuffle much better. Sometimes people do this," and it's just like justified why they shuffled it, but also just a time killer, so I can put my wallets back together before I move on to the next.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, if you're using it for something like that, it's great. But I just always found, for me, like I mentioned to you earlier on, I just work really, really fast. So stuff like that just feels too dead to me. And maybe I should slow down a bit. I'm getting older now, but.
What's yours? I always find when I do tables as well, between my shoulder blades is killing me at the end of the gig. You're like leaning over for people so much when you get to the tables. It's like trying to pick stuff up and pick stuff up.
I know what you mean. Yeah, you have to. He's a bit weird like that. You don't have to hunch over too much though, do you? You sort of try and.
It's when you're trying to if you do, that's where I think the switching to the stand up thing of tables can be beneficial.
And that's why I always used to open with the ropes, because it's all up here.
It's and visual for everyone. Everyone's seeing the one thing.
That's it. And you're standing up.
The bill switch works with that as well, even though it's smaller, but you're standing up and everyone's watching it. If you've got okay angles, you're right.
I used to do the bill switch all the time. I don't know why I stopped doing that, actually. Oh, that was another story, yeah.
Nobody has any bills anymore.
Have you got... Have you got time for one more? Story. So I was doing... when I used to do the bill switch, I'd have forgotten about this. When I used to do the bill switch all the time, I was doing a corporate gig at a golf centre, right? So I borrowed this guy's note. I changed it into 50. And so basically what I used to do was turn it into 50 rupees. That's right. So I'd say, I can borrow a note. I'm going to turn it into a 50, and I turn it into 50 rupees. And I'd say, that's worth about 38 pence. Thank you very much. And I'd stick it in my pocket. And then I used to, And then I'd say, you don't want that though, do you? And I'd turn it back into his note. That's right. And I'd turn it back into his tenner. And then I'd go, well, thank you very much. Put it in my pocket. And that's when I'd ditch the thumb tip in my pocket. Come back out with his note and say I was just kidding. I hand it to him like that. So I went this golf do, and I did that. So I changed it back, went into my pocket, and as I came back out with my pocket, he brought the thumb tip out, and the thumb tip landed on the floor in front of him. And they just went, "Oh, look, it's one of them plastic thumbs." So I picked it up, put it in my pocket, and they went, "How the fuck did that note change into that 50 rupees?" They hadn't got a clue. I think that they just linked the thumb tip to a vanishing silk, and not the bill switch. I mean, I've literally just done the trick in front of them, and they still hadn't got a clue, even though they'd seen the thumb tip on the floor.
They probably think it's even just for a way to do that.
The old gag, yeah. What was that old Darwin? Remember the Darwin, the Vegas guy, when he you could drop a thumb tip, you just go, "Oh, I'm all thumbs," and you just pick it up, put it in your pocket.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. My favorite thing is if someone goes, "Oh, can I show you a trick?" and they do something. A lot of times it uses the key card, and you're like, "Oh, that's really cool." And then my next trick will be something using the key card, which is not the way we used. It's amazing when you can fool people with stuff they know.
Absolutely, yeah.
It goes back to that thing we're talking about, getting into creativity. With the situation of a lot of people, when they learn a trick, it's like these are the steps for the trick, and to go beyond that is weird. Like with the vanishing the silk in a thumb tip. If you vanish a silk in, it's probably a thumb tip, but if you vanish a note, that can't be a thumb tip because that's for a silk, and it's like going, you can use it for anything.
Yeah. Well, Dave Bonsall had that beautiful stretch thumb tip that he used to use for vanishing rings as well.
Yeah,
Nice.
It's brilliant. You just use the same method for 20 different things, and it'll fly each time. Even if you get caught once, they won't catch you the second time.
It's true, yeah. Well, I saw for myself when they hit the floor. I thought, I'm busted here. I'm so busted, and I was still amazed. How did he do that? It was hilarious.
Yeah, especially because with that, the thumb tip is only part of the method. Most of it is the sleight of hand switch that still needs to take place, which kind of kills it then at that point.
Yeah, I haven't done it for ages, to be fair. And it's probably you say people just don't carry cash anymore, do they? You know, so and I think also with these now, I don't know, I've never tried it, but these new plastic notes look like they might be a bit of a nightmare as well.
Probably be harder to slide them. Yeah. We still have kind of paperish kind of ones here, but I know the ones in the UK are a nightmare.
Yeah, they just, I don't know, just creases, because if you get a new note off someone and then you're sort of trying to fold it and put creases in, I just think it'd just be too difficult.
Yeah, whenever anytime someone asks me, it used to work better a few years back, but they'd be like, "Oh, can you turn this into a 50 or whatever?" And I'm like, "Oh, we used to do that, and then we actually caused the financial crisis, so we've been us magicians have been asked to stop."
Do you know what I say now? If people say that to me, they say, "Oh, can you turn this into like? Can you make £100 a bit or all the crap that they normally say?" I just look at them and say, "If I could do that, do you think I'd be standing here doing this?"
Yeah, I always
yeah.
And they just start laughing. They go, "No, I suppose not." And then just completely cuts it dead. With a bit of a gag. And you're also you're taking the piss out of yourself more than them as well, which is, I think, is probably a good thing.
Yeah. My favorite thing of like, can you make my wife disappear at the moment is just going, yeah, I know some people. Do you want to talk after? Or
that's what I say it's 10 grand and no questions.
Yeah, it's just like, because you have Steve, you always do the thing with the clicker that for attendance.
Oh, the clicker thing, yeah.
Click
you that.
Okay.
I like that.
The
other thing, one thing I did at Blackpool actually. So I lectured at Blackpool this year, and the day of my lecture, I decided I was going to get dressed up. So I had a suit on, a 3-piece suit on, and a tie and everything. And of course, 9:10, all the wags are coming up to you and they're going, "Getting married." What time's the judge? What time's the hearing? And all these jokes that you've heard a million times. So I literally just wrote them all down on a piece of paper, and every time somebody came up and went, "Tom, you in front of the judge?" I go, "Oh, get the piece of paper," and then just put it. So you can do that with that, can't you? Make my wife disappear. Tick.
Yeah. I have a pool going with the other magicians. Which one we get the most of tonight?
We'll get the most.
Well, to be honest, I don't know. The thing is, for me, you don't want to make the guy feel too bad about that, because even though it's the millionth time we've heard it, not everybody's seen magic, and he thinks he's being funny. So I let him win there, and then I'll wait until, if anybody's going to laugh, I'll let them laugh, and then I'll say, "It's 10 grand, no questions, mate." You know what I mean? And that gets another laugh, but it doesn't make them look any. You know what I mean? Because I remember when there was these wife vanishing pills, which I thought was quite a clever way around it as well. But it could still, I don't know, I think it still took the shine off what he was saying, because it made it seem like it was too obvious what he was saying. So I thought, but by using this line, 10 grand, and what you said, Dave, 10 grand, no questions, or whatever it is, it's just an add-on to their gag, and it doesn't take the shine off what they've said. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I even get, because like when I'm performing, I can be a bit like energetic, and then at that point I just get very still, and I'm like, I know people.
Yeah. You change the dynamic.
It's like suddenly I'm serious.
I often say like in a Joe Pesci kind of way, and they just kind of and you get that. It just breaks. They don't expect you to say something back.
Yeah, it's always good having but it's important not to make them feel like the butt of the joke a bit as well.
I think so. I think that's important. Yeah, and this all circles round to like things like, we haven't really talked about it tonight, but people worry, especially when they're new to performing, they worry about being heckled and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think when I first started, I used to get it a little bit. And as you get more experienced, I never get it now. And I think the reason of that is, A, is probably because I'm more confident than I used to be. But B is, I realise that you have to shine a light on people. If they're saying stuff like that, it's because they're used to being in the spotlight themselves. So let them have a little bit of the spotlight. Don't make them look silly. Shine a light on them, you know. And I never get heckled ever.
Some heckles, I think, as well, for people, they actually think that they're helping by doing it, and I find that, like, if you're a nervous performer, people feel that, and they want, in their own mind, they feel like they're helping by making it funny, and then if you show up and you're confident and you take command, they go, "Oh, I can relax a bit now."
Yeah. And also, I mean, that's a good point. It might be that you know, I'm taking things less as a heckle now than I used to, because you sort of deal with it straight away and you don't think of it as being a challenge anymore. Maybe that's it. Maybe you're right. It could be partly that, but I think confidence comes into it and stuff. But generally, you know, it's very rare you get. Well, I never get it, but it's very rare if somebody does heckle you that it's been in a nasty way. Anyway,
because it's always a playful thing.
Yeah, it's getting used to judging. Like, sometimes I used to find if someone wasn't interested in the magic, I'd be like, I have to get them on side. But now I'm like, if they don't want to see magic, that's fine. Like,
so what?
They can sit there with a pint and not perform for everyone else. It's fine. Like, it's not a big deal. Well, before it'd be like, oh, I'll make them the center of attention, and what they actually want is to just be left alone. Absolutely.
You just have to learn that the hard way, don't you? Yeah, and not everybody likes magic, do they? You know, some people hate it, in fact, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But
or like they had a bad experience or something at one stage, because we've talked about that before, where, you know, if you meet like a bad magician or whatever, it's just magic is shit then from then on. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And some people just like to know how everything works and how everything's done as well, don't they?
Yeah.
Some people just find it frustrating, like incredibly frustrating, that they can't figure it out, and that just annoys them, rather than they can't suspend the disbelief and just enjoy it in that way.
Yeah. I think really technical or medical people or like engineers and stuff are like that. They just want to know how it's done. And they're trying to, like, you could be doing anything. You could just be blatantly lying to them. And they're still trying to figure out the method, you know.
They're the ones that are easier to fool, aren't they? Because they're so logical. Then what we do is illogical, you know. So they're looking for a logical way of doing things. And
I used to do the thing with them. I used to do a lot of stuff with like Microsoft back in the day, and I take a deck of cards. I had them shuffle it, and I'm going to speed memorize the deck, so I'd fly through it really quick. And they'd be like, "There's no way he's doing this" or whatever. And then I would just peek the top card, and then I just say name a number, and I'd go. And I just named the top card, and I count down to that card. They said 26. Yeah, that was definitely the 3 of heart, because it was a club, and I'll do a whole bit with them. And then I just put that card on the top and do a double lift. Be like, look, 3 hearts. And they were like, "There's no way he could have done that." And it's such a stupid thing, you know. It's so stupid. But they were convinced.
Stupid. Smart.
And they were like, yeah. And they were like, just do it again. And I'm like, well, I need another like 30 seconds. And I just started memorizing the cards again. Great.
That's absolutely great. We've gone for an hour and 21 minutes now, so we won't take up any more.
Chat.
You're a good time, but it's an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. For people who want to pick up some of your products and stuff like that, which I think I have 3 versions of Cloak. I have one in my Maverick, I have one in my close-up case, and I have one spare. But for people who want to pick up some of your stuff, where's the best place for them to go look for everything?
StellaMagicShop.com.
Perfect. I'll put it in the comments down below for people. They can go check that out. And I'm sure you'll be at conventions and Blackpool and stuff as well. So people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It's been great. It's been really good, and thanks everybody for watching and tuning in as well.
Pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again next time. Please subscribe. We don't know when we'll be back, but
we'll be back. We're busy, but we'll be back.
Talk to you later.